Let's now take a look at the lens and the interior of the eyeball. If we make a sagittal section through the eye and magnify it, this is what we'll see. We'll magnify each of these portions in the next few diagrams. The lens, shown here, is a structure that lacks blood vessels and consists of a capsule with proteins called crystallins in layers, much like an onion. And of course it's transparent in order to allow light to enter the eye. The lens divides the eyeball into two cavities, an anterior cavity and a posterior cavity. We can see the anterior cavity labeled up here, which consists of two parts, and we'll talk about those in just a second, and the posterior cavity shown down here. The anterior cavity, as indicated in the diagram, is further divided into two chambers, an anterior chamber and a posterior chamber. The anterior chamber is the portion of the anterior cavity that's in front of the iris. The posterior chamber is that part of the anterior cavity that's behind the iris. Both of these are filled with aqueous humor. Aqueous humor is a fluid that is made by the blood vessels of the ciliary process. This fluid moves in this direction, as indicated by the arrows, from the posterior chamber to the anterior chamber, and then it drains into what is called the scleral venous sinus, or canal of Schlemm, which then takes it to the blood. Usually aqueous humor is replaced about every 90 minutes. If you're not draining the aqueous humor fast enough, then you will develop what is called glaucoma. Glaucoma is a buildup of the fluid in this anterior cavity, and it can cause blindness because the pressure is exerted all the way back from the anterior cavity back to the retina. The posterior cavity is known as the vitreous chamber, and it's filled with a fluid known as vitreous body. The vitreous body does not undergo constant replacement like the aqueous humor does. The purpose of the vitreous body is to push the retina flush up against the choroid, giving the retina an even surface so that it can receive images. Sometimes you might see little speckles that are moving across the field of vision. These are called vitriol floaters or simply floaters. They're usually harmless and don't require any treatment. All they are simply cells that are sloughing off and that are floating across the vitreous body.